Warning! This podcast contains unfiltered logic, unlicensed sarcasm, and prolonged exposure to unapologetic American values. If you have an allergy to facts, side effects may include emotional instability, sudden urges to tweet hashtags, and uncontrollable crying in the comments section. Consult your moral compass before proceeding. Listener discretion is not just advised, it's mandatory.
Washington, D.C., the beating heart of American politics and, apparently, the crime capital's cousin twice removed. Over the past month, we've seen stories of carjackings where the suspect was out on bail before the tow truck even arrived, store owners boarding up like there's a hurricane warning, and city council members more focused on writing resolutions about climate change than cleaning up their own streets. Enter President Trump, no stranger to bold moves, who says enough is enough, invokes the Home Rule Act, and flips DC's law enforcement from a local problem into a federal mission. 800 National Guard troops roll in, and suddenly half the city feels safer while the other half is screaming about the death of democracy. And if that's not enough for you, hold on to your coffee because in segment 2, we pivot to the icy stage of Alaska. Trump and Putin, face to face, with nearly 19,500 kidnapped Ukrainian children as the moral and political litmus test. Forget your think pieces and Twitter threads. This is the stuff history books should be written about. Let's get into it. First on deck, Brian. If patriotism were a contact sport, this guy would have a Super Bowl ring, a retired jersey hanging in the rafters, and a concussion protocol named after him. He's been known to wave the American flag so hard it generates wind power. And rumor has it his morning coffee is brewed with tears from failed Marxist revolutions. Next, Rachel, the independent voice of the panel, who somehow manages to fact-check me mid-sentence while also pulling up a Yelp review for a taco truck on the other side of the country. She's the only person I know who can quote the Federalist Papers and argue for the best hot sauce at the same time, and be equally persuasive on both. And finally, Daniel, our conspiracy board general, the man whose wall of red string is so extensive the Pentagon probably has it filed under classified art installations. His mind works like a steel trap that's been greased with black coffee and bad intentions toward the deep state. All right, team, are we ready to shred the narrative, torch the script, and serve the truth with a side of sarcasm today?
Only if we can make a few liberals cry in the process.
I'm here for the conversation, not the crying.
I brought extra string, just in case the plot thickens.
Today's episode is powered by the Caleb Rourke thriller series, The Covenant Protocol and the Prophet Directive, with Book 3, Black Echo Rising, coming soon. If you like your thrillers with real-world grit, moral gray zones, and plots that move faster than a politician dodging questions, grab them now on Amazon. And don't forget, the merch store is open at dataanddissonance.printify.me. Coffee blends, Gen X shirts, bumper stickers, all the gear you need to trigger your HOA president and spark conversations at the gas pump. So, Washington, D.C., home to the Smithsonian, the Capitol, monuments that inspire millions, and also more crime headlines lately than Chicago on a Friday night. You've got carjackings in broad daylight, drug deals in parks that are supposed to be family spaces, and a mayor more interested in tweeting motivational quotes than addressing why local residents are afraid to walk to the corner store. President Trump finally says, enough is enough, dusts off the Home Rule Act, and in one move flips DC's policing from a local matter to a federal mission. 800 National Guard troops deployed, boots on the ground for at least 30 days. Depending on who you ask, that's either the best thing since indoor plumbing or the beginning of a Tom Clancy novel where DC gets locked down under martial law. Brian, I can almost hear you clapping from here. Tell me I'm wrong.
Not wrong at all, Artie. I've been to DC enough times to know you don't need a sightseeing tour. You need a security escort. And this isn't about militarizing the Capitol. It's about restoring basic safety. The same people crying authoritarian takeover are the ones who supported Guard deployments for climate protests, for COVID checkpoints, and for anything else that lined up with their pet causes. Suddenly, when it's about stopping criminals instead of stopping conservatives, they've got a problem. And let's not forget, these 800 Guard members aren't here to pose for postcards. They're here to make sure the next tourist bus rolling up to the Lincoln Memorial doesn't get caught in the middle of a gang shootout.
Daniel, I know you've already got 3 red strings pinned between Home Rule Act, election optics, and media narrative flip. Go ahead, give us the tinfoil tour.
Oh, it's not even tinfoil, Artie. It's straight up obvious. This isn't just about stopping crime. It's about cutting off a narrative the media's been nursing like a prized bonsai tree. DC's chaos was their look. Trump's America is falling apart. B-roll. Now, Trump walks in, flips the board, and says, "My city now." The 30-day window is calculated, long enough to stabilize the streets, long enough to gather hard data on just how badly local leadership has been failing, and perfectly timed to hit a political sweet spot heading into the fall.
Rachel, you're usually the one saying good idea, bad execution. Where does this land for you?
It lands in the necessary but needs guardrails category. Pun intended. I'm all for safety. Residents deserve to walk home without being scared, and shop owners deserve to open their doors without wondering if today's the day someone smashes the window and runs off with the cash register. But federal control should come with a clearly defined exit plan. What's the benchmark for mission accomplished? Drop in violent crime, increased arrest rates, public satisfaction. If those aren't spelled out now, you risk letting an emergency measure turn into a permanent arrangement, and that's dangerous no matter who's in the White House.
Brian, follow up for you. What do you say to the critics who swear this is just optics for the campaign trail?
I'd say they're half right. It is optics, but it's also results. If you can make a political point and make the streets safer at the same time, why wouldn't you? People keep pretending politics and policy don't mix, but the truth is, every move has an angle. The question is whether the angle helps the people or just helps the headlines. This helps the people. And yeah, it's going to look good, because it is good.
And don't underestimate the intel factor. This guard deployment isn't just security theater, it's an operational sweep. Every patrol, every arrest, every surveillance report builds a picture of what's been going on under local leadership's nose. If and when that data goes public, it's going to make a lot of DC council members sweat.
Which is exactly why that data should be shared. Transparency makes it harder for anyone to spin this later. If the Guard uncovers corruption, mismanagement, or systemic gaps, DC residents should be the first to know. That's how you get buy-in from the community instead of making them feel like this is something being done to them rather than for them.
All right, lightning round. You've got 30 seconds each. It's day 30, crime still high. What's your move?
Extend the deployment. Crime doesn't take a day off, so neither should we.
Extend it, but drop a public intel report explaining exactly why they're staying. Make it impossible for the opposition to spin.
Only extend if there's a transparent plan for what comes next, whether that's more Guard, more police funding, or systemic reforms. Endless deployment without direction is just kicking the can down the road.
So, to sum it up, Brian says keep the Guard until the criminals need a permission slip to leave the house. Daniel says use it as an intelligence goldmine. Rachel says fine, but give the people a roadmap. Either way, DC just became a live test of whether federal intervention is the cure for a city that's been politically ill for a long time. And something tells me this won't be the last we hear about it before Election Day. All right, let's pack our bags and head north. Way north, to Alaska. This Friday, President Trump is meeting face-to-face with Vladimir Putin in what's being billed as the most high-stakes sit-down of the year. Sure, there's the usual list of topics. Ukraine's battlefield map, sanctions, trade pressure. But one issue is cutting through all the static like a flare in the night. Nearly 19,500 kidnapped Ukrainian children who were taken into Russia or Russian-controlled territory. That's not just a statistic. That's thousands of families wondering if their kids are safe, alive, or ever coming home. And now, people are saying this has to be the moral line in the sand. Brian, I have a feeling I already know your starting position, but go ahead. Give it to me.
Artie, there's no middle ground here. You can argue politics over borders, sanctions, troop movements. Fine. But kids, that's where you stop negotiating and start drawing ultimatums. No child should be used as leverage in a geopolitical poker game, period. And if I were in that room, the first words out of my mouth would be, no kids, no deal. Not a handshake, not a joint press conference, not even a photo op until every single child is accounted for in return. The second you compromise on something this basic, you've told the world there's nothing truly off limits.
Daniel, your eyes just did that? I've already connected 6 dots thing. What's the deeper play you're seeing?
The deeper play is timing. Russia just made fresh territorial gains in Ukraine days before the summit. That's not random. It's like showing up to a poker table with a stack of chips you grabbed off someone else's seat. Now they get to walk in saying, "Look what we've got. What will you give us to give some of it back?" The kids become the emotional concession, the thing they can gift to make themselves look reasonable, while keeping the land they took as the real prize. It's hostage diplomacy dressed up as a humanitarian gesture.
Rachel, you're our trust but verify panelist. If Putin agrees to return the children, what's your biggest concern?
My biggest concern is follow-through. Even if there's an agreement, you're talking about tracking nearly 20,000 children who've been scattered across regions, foster systems, and in some cases, adopted into Russian families. Without a robust multinational verification system, boots on the ground, full access to records, and the authority to retrieve kids, you're relying on Russia's word. And history tells us that's not a safe bet.
Brian, critics say making this arid line could stall any progress on the broader conflict. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. In fact, I think the opposite is true. Setting a moral non-negotiable changes the tone of the entire summit. It forces both sides to acknowledge that some lines aren't about politics. They're about basic humanity. And if that stalls the conversation on other points, good. Maybe it's time the world stops rushing to wrap deals in pretty paper when the box underneath is still rotting.
And let's not pretend Russia hasn't used this tactic before. They've leveraged humanitarian issues in past negotiations to distract from bigger concessions they wanted. You give back lives, you keep the land, and the headlines read, "Peace achieved." Meanwhile, the actual geopolitical reality hasn't changed one bit. We need to be very careful not to let the moral victory become a political fig leaf.
That's why the deal has to be structured with milestones. Not just return the children, but return 5,000 by this date, 10,000 by this date, with independent oversight confirming every handoff. Without that, you'll get a symbolic gesture. Maybe a few hundred kids returned. And then radio silence.
All right, final pass around the table. You're looking into your crystal ball. What happens Friday?
Trump pushes hard on the kids. Putin tests the waters with a partial offer, maybe a few thousand, to see if that softens the stance on sanctions. The question is whether Trump calls the bluff or takes the partial as a win to keep things moving.
I think we get a dramatic announcement. Russia agrees to return the children. But the fine print will say details to be worked out later, and later never comes.
I think there will be an agreement in principle, but unless the implementation is locked in before the summit ends, the momentum will fade. And the sad reality is, without international enforcement, families could still be waiting years.
So we've got Brian drawing a hard red line, Daniel warning us not to fall for the moral shell game, and Rachel saying, "Fine, but show me the receipts, and soon." Friday's summit isn't just another chapter in the Ukraine conflict. It's a test of whether morality can actually muscle its way into geopolitics without getting traded away like another bargaining chip. Today's Patriot Minute goes to Folds of Honor. an organization that's been delivering hope and opportunity since 2007. Founded by Lieutenant Column Dan Rooney after a flight home from his second tour in Iraq, Folds of Honor was inspired by seeing a flag-draped casket met by a grieving family. Since then, they've awarded over 62,000 scholarships, totaling nearly $290 million, to the spouses and children of America's fallen and disabled service members and first responders. One story that stuck with me is from a Gold Star daughter who lost her dad in Afghanistan when she was 12. With Folds of Honor's help, she became the first in her family to graduate college. And now she's a trauma nurse saving lives every day. Another recipient used his scholarship to become a high school history teacher, making sure the next generation understands the price of freedom. These are the ripple effects of sacrifice, and the reason we can never let service be forgotten once the news cycle moves on. You can help at foldsofonor.org.
From the streets of DC to the icy halls of an Alaska summit, strength matters. You set the tone by showing you won't back down. Not to criminals, not to foreign powers. That's leadership.
Strength is vital, but so is accountability. If we don't define what success looks like, deployments last forever and agreements never get verified.
And if we don't control the narrative, someone else will, and they'll sell it in a way that erases the truth in favor of their agenda.
Whether it's cleaning up the Capitol or confronting a world leader, the real test isn't in the announcement. It's in the follow-through. DC's streets and Ukraine's stolen children are both battles for the soul of what we say we stand for. Words are easy. Action is the currency that matters. Remember to speak truth, stir thought. See you tomorrow.